So sometimes museum collections can get overlooked, and people can move past certain museums and just go to bigger museums in the world and look at their collections. But there's many collections in North America that have been established for half a century, sometimes nearly a century long, such as the Newark Museum. Newark Museum has quite a large collection. A lot of it is documentation, a lot of it is anthropological material, and I unfortunately have not seen all of it. And on our website, I do not believe that we have all of it. We only have examples of sculpture, examples of painting, and then other miscellaneous material. But looking at the masterworks of the Newark Museum of Art, we really can choose. We can choose 9 items that are really quite interesting. Some of them I know more about, some a little bit less. Some are not properly even identified yet, and work needs to be done on that. Now, Valerie Reynolds did do a catalog back in the 90s, and several other people contributed to that catalog. And so there is material. Plus, the Newark Museum put out a series of I believe they're like journals, maybe 5, 6, 7 of them, back in the previous decades, not the last 20 years, but the 30, 40, 50 years ago. They put out a series of journals where they talk about their Himalayan and Tibetan art. But here, what we can look at is 9 pieces that really stand out. One of them is a female deity, Nepalese, standing one face, 2 arms. She's on a throne, and she has an elaborate torana behind her throne back. It's not clear who she is. It's not clear if it's a Tara or if it's a Brakuti or a Marichi or it's possible it's a retinue figure for a larger sculpture. Or it's also possible that the throne and the Torana backdrop don't belong to this female figure, and she's been placed on it. And there was another figure, possibly a Dipamkara Buddha or Shakyamuni in standing form, that resided there previously. Now, the second one is something that I sort of pondered over. I believe it's Tibetan. It's most likely Tibetan. It's a male figure holding a mongoose in the left hand, and the right hand is upraised with a pointing gesture. Possibly it held something at one point. It held a stick or a staff. And there's a female figure embracing him with the legs wrapped around his waist. And they're both fully clothed. He's wearing a hat. But I think it's possible that this is a revealed treasure form of Padmasambhava. But if it is, it's the finest one we know of. And I've not really found the text for this, and I've not found really comparables that have helped with a clear identification as yet. Now, the third sculpture is very, very good, very important, and it is a metalwork figure of Jo Atisha, and it's one of the finest metalwork Jo Atishas that we know of in museums and collections around the world. So this is important. Now, it's been documented as Tibetan, but I tend to think that it's actually Chinese, a Chinese production, and probably predating Qianlong. So it could be Kangxi or earlier, not too much earlier. We're looking at 17th century, early 18th century possibly, but it is a very good example of an Atisha. The fourth sculpture is a standing male figure. Any attributes that it once had are gone. It has no base, there's no lotus base, and there's no throne back on it. So I do not know who it is. I tend to think that it has some characteristics that are Nepalese, but it's also possible that it's a copy. It's a Chinese copy. Now, the fifth item is actually very important. It's important for religious studies, and it's important for art history, because it is one of the very earliest metal sculptures of the Buddhist deity Vajrakila that we know of. It's a very, very early piece. It could be 12th, 13th century, very early. There's no consort with it. It's just by itself. But early piece, very well done, well preserved, and important for the study of the material culture and the imagery of the deity Vajrakila, of the early Nyingma and the Sakya Kun family, who are the major promoters of the Kama, the oral tradition Vajrakila practice. Now, the sixth item is well known. It's published. I believe it's either on the cover or the back cover of Valerie Reynolds' book. And it's a very, very beautiful Vajravarahi done in silver. It's got the boar's head protruding from the right side of Vajravarahi's face. Extremely well done. Definitely one of the top metal sculptural figures of Vajravarahi that we have today in museum or private collections. The seventh item is actually most likely it's Nepalese. It's a Vajradara in solitary form, mercuric gild. To finish, it's got some embedded turquoise and jewels. I'm not sure the size of this, but it's quite impressive and it's quite nice. We do, of course, have a lot of examples of this sort of Nepalese sculpture. Now, the eighth item is unusual. It's a fully dressed wrathful deity, most likely Vajrapani, holding a 9-pronged Vajra and a bell at the left hip. And what's unusual about it is just the amount of clothing. I mean, that's just it's just not normal. It's not normal. And then he has a human skin on top of that. Then he has an elephant skin on top of that. So he's wearing like these robes, these fabric robes. And then he has a human skin, and then he has an elephant hide wrapped on the back, which is not easy to see. You have to look for the hands, feet, and then the pads of the elephant hanging over the right and left shoulder, and the head of the elephant under the right arm, hanging against the clothing. So this is a very unusual piece. We really have to question, like, whoa, what's the date? When was it done? And it's unusual to have a 9-pronged Vajra the way it's done here. So an unusual piece, worthy of more study. Now, the last piece we're going to look at is a Bodhisattva figure. And we can identify it as a Bodhisattva figure because we have other examples. There's another example in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. There's examples in other museums. It has copper and silver inlay. It's done in, it's copying a Pala style, but then is it Nepalese, Newar, copying a Pala style? Or is it Tibetans copying a Newar style, copying Pala? Or is it actually Qianlong in China, 18th century, copying Tibetan, Newar, and Indian Pala style? So this is a question that needs to be resolved. So the Newark Museum, very interesting collection, well worth looking at. A lot of the sculpture has not been properly identified and not been properly documented. So there's room here for new and budding scholarship. So you can press the like button, you can subscribe, you can join HAR on Patreon. It's more important you join HAR on Patreon, then you can help financially support the work we do. And you can also make a donation on the homepage of Himalayan Art Resources.